Welcome. Thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to teach you one yin pose that you could do every day, and it's going to kind of bring some vitality back into your feet, into your legs, and eventually into your whole body. I just learned it in one of my teacher trainings for yin yoga with Denise Payne, and she challenged me to do it for 14 days, and I'm in the middle of that. By now, maybe when you're watching it, I'm through it, and I'm loving it. Like, my feet feel so much better, my ankles feel better, and I wanted to pass it along to you. So it's very simple. It's 6 minutes a day. That's all you need. You don't need any props. You just need the floor and a timer. So we're going to start off. I'm going to give you a few tips for helping it feel a little bit better in case it's a little too intense. So we're going to target the front of the shins, the ankles, and the ankle joints. And what you want to do is make sure that you're comfortable. You want to find the little bit of your edge, right? So where it's uncomfortable but tolerable to sit there. If there's pain, you need to modify in some way. So the first pose that we're going to do is the toe stretch. So you're going to come to your knees, and if your knees bother you, you can always place a blanket underneath. I like to have that little support of the blanket just under me to begin with, where then my toes are off of it, so I get the toe part of this toe ankle stretch. So I'm going to come down, my toes are going to be tucked under. I'm going to make sure all toes are pointing the same direction, and then I'm going to sit back on my heels. Now if you find that this is too intense, you have two options. You can lean forward, so taking a little bit of that weight off, or you can take the block and place it between your feet and sit on that block, and so that also then takes off a little bit of that intensity off the feet. So you have that as an option. So set yourself up. We're going to alternate between this one and another pose, which we'll get into in a moment. Actually, I'll show you right now. So the other pose, so you felt this, you know where you're going to go for this one. The second one we're going to go right into is you're going to point your toes, your ankles are going to be flat, and you're going to sit on your heels. So that might be just enough intensity for you. If it's too much flexion or extension of your ankles, you can roll up the blanket and take your ankle joint right over that and sit back. So it's going to be a little less intense on the ankle joint. If you feel like you can go deeper into this pose and that ankle joint isn't an issue, you'll keep the feet flat, and then you're going to start to lean back into it. So you're going to get more of that extension on the front side. And at the beginning, I like to place a little block underneath, just so I don't have to worry about balancing. And then over time, you can adjust it to leaning back more, maybe even hugging those knees into the chest. All right, so let us begin. Press pause if you need to gather anything. We're going to start here with those toes pressing down first, and then sitting up. And then you're going to settle in. So it's a minute for each. You're going to alternate through those 3 rounds. So it's 6 minutes out of your life. Maybe this is something you do in the morning. Maybe it's something you do after a walk. Maybe before a walk. Just 6 minutes. 6 minutes when you're just sitting around, scrolling through social media, watching TV. And so you just want to feel, you're going to feel different sensations. So there's this compression right now into the balls of the feet. Maybe even a little stretch into the soles of the feet. And another thing that I didn't mention, but if you want to, you could also sit. Maybe sitting back all the way on your heels isn't so great for your knees. You can sit up onto a cushion or something underneath your heels. Just kind of notice the sensations. So then we're going to start to transition here into those flat toes. So make sure the toes, big toes, are kind of almost touching. Toes are pointing back, and then sit down onto those heels. And it just depends on how your body's built. Your heels might be more all the way under you, or they might kind of roll out. My heels kind of roll out. That just is where I sit. But your big toes are kind of toward one another. Knees can be apart or together. And with practice, this will become a little bit more easier. You know exactly where your edge is. You know where to go into your pose. You know what feels good and what's a little too much. Just a few more breaths here. then start to transition back to those toes. Make sure all 10 toes are pointing the same direction and bringing those knees back down. And the great part of this is a lot of the yin meridians, or I'd say all of the yin meridians, pretty much start in the feet, right? So they start in the feet, in the legs, and then they work their way up. So they work either on the outside, the inside, the front, or the backs of the legs. So you're kind of stimulating all of these meridian lines, these yin lines, as you're doing this pose. So it's very, very beneficial to unblocking energy, as well as getting the energy flowing a little bit more, but also then keeping that vitality in the feet, keeping those feet young. As it was described to me from my teacher, Denise Payne, and in ancient Chinese medicine, or in traditional Chinese medicine, they believe that your feet are your first and foremost front for keeping vital, for keeping alive, keeping energy. Go ahead and transition again. And if you can't walk really well, if your feet are tender, if your ankles hurt, if anything is wrong on your feet, you start to walk a little differently. And so your feet get stiff, and then your body gets stiff, and then you find all these different ailments that are happening in the body because your feet aren't feeling good. But if you can keep your feet healthy and you can keep them full of mobility as you do like this flexion and extension, then you have more energy that's flowing through your body, and they believe that you stay younger longer. And I feel from living in Malaysia, seeing a lot of the Chinese Malaysians walking around in the mornings, and they do all these different things with their wrists and their arms and their ankles, and I thought they were crazy at first. I'm like, why are they doing that? That just seems crazy. It makes so much more sense now that I have studied the meridians and I've studied a little bit of yin yoga, that it's coming more and more into my mind's eye that, hey, they actually aren't crazy, they're actually really smart. And then go ahead and transition to our last round. So it was me that was crazy by not listening to them all those years, but back then, my body felt pretty good. And as you age, you go through experiences, your body goes through traumas, through injuries, you start to realize that you need to take better care. You need to make sure that it's as strong and beneficial for yourself as you can by doing good things for your body. So again, if this is ever getting too much, maybe you do only 2 rounds. Maybe this is the point you're like, whoa, the balls of my feet are hurting. I can just see how high heels, how they just are very detrimental to feet. Couple more breaths here. And then last round with those toes flat. And again, you can keep rolling up. If you have that blanket, you can roll that up. Eventually, I tend to lean back now, and I hold, and it's a little bit of a balance. But again, pressing down into those feet, finding that length in the front of the shins. Just continue to breathe. Just a few more rounds of breath here. Just think it's the last one here. Good, and then slowly coming down. Shift your hips to one side, take those legs out in front of you, and just pause. Just sit there with the legs out in front. You might need to bend the knees, keep the legs straight. Just kind of notice those sensations happening in the legs, in the lower legs. Just kind of checking in here. And then bend those knees. You kind of point and flex through the feet a little bit. And then take the legs back out straight again, and maybe let those feet rock back and forth, side to side. And then any other movements that feel natural. Maybe some circles. And that's it. 6 minutes a day. You can keep that flexibility and that mobility into those heels and those ankles, and just see how it goes. See how it feels for you. You choose, maybe do it 14 days, maybe those 14 days stretch into the rest of your life. If not, do it once a week whenever you feel like you need a little bit more support for those ankles. And then let me know how it goes. Give me a little comment in the post. Thank you. Drink lots of water, eat your veggies, wear some sunblock. Namaste.